Freeway Ricky Ross, welcome back.
What up? What up?
Your last one did pretty good with us.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah.
A lot of people come up to me and say they saw me on your show and they enjoyed it. I think you get even more people recognize me from your show than even Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. You know, which are some pretty big companies.
Pretty big names out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we're up there with the big boys. I like it. Speaking of big boys, your documentary was nominated for an Emmy.
It was.
Congratulations.
But, more Hollywood politics. They took my name off as a producer, which I should have been producer and director. Probably should have been lead producer because I did more work on the piece than anybody else. But it was other guys, Hollywood guys, who had the credentials and just so many Hollywood politics. They didn't want me to be the producer of my own documentary. They rather lie to the people and tell the people that some other guy did it when in actuality I really did it anyway. So why not tell the people what really happened? But it did well. I think it would have did better had this not been going on between the inner circle. If everything would have been crystal clear, the doc could have came out at its original times and whatnot. We're in a lawsuit with that as well. So, just people, I guess being people, greedy, selfish, the normal stuff that's going on in society right now.
Well, ultimately, it was a good piece.
A lovely piece. Oh, the piece, I believe, that all of America should watch this piece. I think that this piece could be, kind of a healing for not just myself, but for society. It gives society a chance to really take a look at what was going on in society at this particular time.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that because, last time you were here, we talked about your story, about how you got into the drug game, where you were at the height of the drug game, the whole Iran-Contra situation, how you went to prison, how you ended up getting released. But I want to go into some of the details in terms of what happened while you were in the game. First of all, we never talked about your involvement with the police and how they approached you. So I guess there was a Freeway Task Force.
It was.
What year was this, roughly?
The first time I heard about the Freeway Task Force was roughly around 83, 84.
Okay.
But I didn't know there was a Freeway Task Force at the time. When I heard about them, they had raided a couple of my guys, who I sold cocaine to. At this time, I don't think they really knew who I was, because they never. At this time, they wasn't even mentioning my name.
Right. You were always low key.
Right. But I had a couple guys, who were a little more flashy and had some of the finer things in life, who were enjoying life, and they got raided before I did. Well, the first one was a youngster. I think he was about 16, and they raided his house. Well, when they raided his house, there was no drugs. He was calling me to order more drugs. I think he had like 60-something thousand in the house. So when the cops raided, he was 16 years old, and they were asking him whose money was that. He had 60-something $1,000 in the house, and they wanted to know whose money it was. And he said he didn't know. So the cops let him go and took the money. Now, you would have thought when they took the money, they would have turned the money in at headquarters and reported it and did the normal file, but they didn't do that. So when the youngster got to me, he told me, he said, Rick, these sheriffs raided my house, beat me up, and took the money. I said, well,
Now, was there drugs also or just money?
At this time, it was, coincidentally, it was no drugs. Now, he had just finished selling drugs.
Okay.
But he didn't have any drugs at the house.
Okay.
So when he told me this, I said, well, they're not supposed to take your money. We can get that money back. So what I do is I call my lawyer and put him on the phone with the lawyer and tell the lawyer what happened. The lawyer said, yeah, I can get the money back. I'm going to charge you a percentage of the money to get it back for you. Boom.
Well, hold on. Why would you try to get drug money back? isn't that just like a cost of doing business? Every so often, the police are just going to knock you and you let that go.
Well, some people was doing it like that, but I felt I had enough legitimate business that I could account for large sums of money.
Right, because for example, if you read the BMF story, that was kind of the unraveling of BMF. Like there was like a bunch of jewelry seized that was bought with drug money, and I think Big Meech's brother tried to get it back, and it started a whole federal investigation that ultimately brought down BMF.
Well, that's kind of what happened with us as well.
Okay.
Almost. But a little different. We got a little different spin on it. Well, anyway, the lawyer called in. The money wasn't reported missing. So they started an investigation on what happened to the money. Eventually, the lawyer was able to get the money back. And then it was another guy. They raided his house. He had 900 and something, almost $1 million
In cash.
in cash.
Wow.
No drugs, because this was his house that he lived out in Lancaster, away from L.A., where he sold his drugs. Well, they took the money and also planted drugs on him. So what had happened is that the cops had got hip that if they didn't plant drugs, the people could get the money back. So what they started doing is just started planting the drugs to make it like the last time that they raided one of my associate's house, which was Ali Newell, my right-hand man, they raided his house and they took and put a kilo of cocaine inside of his safe and took a picture right next to some money. Not the money that was all there. They took a portion of the money out, took a picture of it, just, boom. Now that becomes evidence. Because what happened, they figured out it became harder if you would come to court and you said, "Oh, Your Honor, that's my money." Well, now if you come to court and you tell the judge, "Well, Your Honor, that's my money, but the drugs ain't mine," the judge is going to be looking at you crazy. So the cops had got hip, and that's how they started fighting against us. Because, I taught my guys never keep drugs and money in the same place. For security reasons.
Okay. So you got your $60,000 back,
Yeah.
but you couldn't get the $1 million back.
We got a portion of the $1 million back, too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Even though there were some drugs planted on there? Mm-hmm. Okay. How much did you get back?
I don't remember. That wasn't my money.
Okay.
It was just a friend of mine money. But, the way I do business is if we work together, we're partners. So if something happens to you, it happened to me. And whatever would happen with my guys, I would share all of my resources with them. So I don't remember exactly how much money he got. He probably got back probably 600, maybe 500,000. But back then it was a lot more lax with the forfeiture laws and things of that nature than it is right now. Right now you probably wouldn't get that back. They took $100,000 from me a couple months back up in Humboldt, and I'm still trying to get some of that back now.
We'll talk about that. I heard about that. Okay, so 2 of your guys get raided. They seize the money. What happens next?
Well, no, they done raided 50 or 60 of my guys. I just use those as examples so that we won't be going through the same stories over and over and over and over again. Well, what had happened is I saw a pattern of them raiding houses that there's no drugs, but planting drugs. So then they raid one of my girlfriend's house. And they ain't never had drugs in this house. So the only way it would be drugs in there is if she was using. Because I didn't use, and I didn't think she used either. And the amount that they had in the house was really too much drugs for somebody to be using. It was a kilo of cocaine. So I go to my lawyer, Alan Finster, the same guy that's in the documentary. And I say, "Look, man, these cops are planting drugs on people. They're not doing any investigation. They're not doing search warrants. They're doing everything illegal." And he kind of like blew me off. Like, "Oh, man, get out of here. Cops don't do that." I said, "Man, I'm telling you." So then he told me, he said, "Okay, well, if you think they're doing all that, what you should do is hire an investigator and investigate the cops." I said, "Good idea."
So you hired a private investigator to investigate the police.
I hired a private investigator to investigate the police.
Was this an ex-cop himself or no?
He was an ex-cop. An ex-sheriff.
An ex-sheriff is investigating other cops. Okay, this is great. Go on.
So, and this is when I find out that their name is called the Freeway Task Force, because I don't know they're the Freeway Task Force. I think it's just a bunch of cops, because they only hit close to me one time, and that's when they hit my my baby mama's house. So the investigator, he's running around, he's doing all his investigation, burned up a lot of money. You know, I spent about $100,000 on this investigator to dig up all the evidence. And so he come to me one day and he's like, man, do you know this cops, they call themselves the Freeway Task Force? And I was like, what? The Freeway Task Force? So he builds up a file on them. You know, he's going around, when they raid, he goes and talks to all the neighbors and what happened. And neighbors are like, oh, I heard screams and hollers and, you know, sound like they was torching a guy in there. And I saw this happen, I saw that happen. Then he would investigate the people who got arrested when they got out of prison, or he would go to prison. And, I mean, he was thorough. This guy Frenchie was thorough. So we built up all this file, and in the meantime, I wind up getting indicted, and now I'm on the run. So they finally catch me one day. I'm working on one of my apartments, and cops come up to arrest me, stick the dog on me while I'm handcuffed, beat me in the head with flashlights. You know, I was like the Punkin Man, you know, for like 4 or 5 days. Head was swollen, legs were swollen. They hid me out for about 2 weeks. You know, nobody could see me. Nobody on the outside could take pictures or anything. They only let my lawyer come in and see me after my leg had started turning green and it got infected, you know, because of the medication they was giving me. And they also allowed an outside doctor to come in. My lawyer was able to get the judge to allow an outside doctor to come in. So when I get arrested, we take that file. They got a federal indictment because these cops couldn't catch me. They turned it over to the feds. Well, no. First, what happened is I went to court in the state. They had came down. The cops had came down and tried to interview me and everything, and recorded the conversation. So eventually, the courts heard the tapes where they interviewed me, and they had spliced the tapes, because if you would have listened to the tapes, you could have tell that what they was accusing me of, I hadn't done. Yes, I was selling drugs, but the drugs that they had planted on me, you could tell from the tapes that those conversations wasn't the right conversations. And I didn't know I was being recorded either. It was like they were secretly recording me, and me and them were arguing about situations and things of that nature. So anyway, when the courts got the tape was spliced all up and cut. The judge said, get this case out of here, I'm done with it. So what they did is they took their case and took me to the feds. When I got to the feds, my lawyer took Frenchie's investigation and said, hey, you guys can't prosecute this case because your witnesses are tainted. They've been stealing, robbing, the whole 9 yards. So they don't do anything for it right off the bat. The feds don't, with the cops. The cops are still running around. So what they do is they send an undercover fed, posing like he's trying to get drugs or sell drugs or something, and somehow they tip these cops off that a drug deal is about to go down. But these are the feds, and it ain't a real drug deal. So these cops surround the hotel. 4 or 5 of them go in, beat the guy up, take the guy's money, take him to jail, say he had like $30,000, $40,000, throw him in jail, and it all turned out to be a fed. So they all get indicted.
So they actually beat up a drug dealer who's actually an undercover fed.
Exactly.
Did he try to say, hey, I'm a fed, stop beating me up?
Well, I think if he would have did that, he'd have blew his cover.
Oh.
I think that what he did, because, you know, this is one of the biggest cop corruption cases at that time in the country. I think 35 cops got suspended. 6 or 7 went to prison. Another set got hung juries and got civil rights violation cases. So it wasn't. I think he took it serious. You know, if you undercover, you know, you're supposed to take the whooping too. You know.
And this kind of tied into the whole Rampart situation.
Well, Rampart is an offshoot of the Freeway Task Force.
Okay.
The guys who didn't get fired from the Freeway Task Force went to Rampart, and they started the whole thing all over again, with a clean slate, without being tainted, because Sobo and Tomar and Egner and Polak. Because what they did with the Freeway Task Force was like a bunch of stations all together. They took like the best officers from 77, from Lennox, from Firestone, and put together this elite task force, because what they were saying was that they couldn't just attack one area, because I wasn't in just one area. I was spread it out across the city, and they wanted their officers, I guess, to be spread it out across the city.
Okay. And these guys were essentially cops robbing drug dealers.
Correct.
Kind of like in Training Day.
Yeah. Training Day probably was an offshoot of what these cops were doing, and also it wasn't like these cops were my friends. We wasn't selling drugs together. Like, we didn't sit down and say, man, look, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go out and we're gonna do this deal, and you got my back, so you make sure nothing happened. No, that never happened. Okay. We never sit down. We never talked. We never had a plan together. These cops were just coming in robbing us.
Okay. You never had any cops on payroll?
Never.
No,
I didn't need them.
Okay. I guess at one point there was like a high-speed chase where the cops were shooting at you and stuff like that. Does that happen during that time?
I had a few high-speed chases with the cops.
Okay. A few times this happened.
With the time you're talking about when they actually were shooting, that was over on 74th, right off of Western. I was leaving my tire shop one night, and I noticed that these same cops were following us. They had just arrested Ali, so when he pulled on the side of us, Ali saw his badge and his face, and he said, "Oh, that's Tomar, amigo. He said he's gonna kill you." So that was enough for me to flee. The fact that he was gonna kill me, and I took off. And I did what they call a stop and roll, where you stop the car just enough to get out and run, and let the car keep going, and that's when they started shooting.
Okay. So, did you ever testify against any police?
I did.
You did?
Absolutely.
Okay. How many police did you testify against?
I think it was 6, 8.
6 or 8 police officers?
Yeah.
And what was your testimony about them essentially robbing you and planting drugs?
Yeah, robbing the people who I knew didn't have drugs planted on them. My girlfriend's case, my particular case where they had planted drugs on me. Did I shoot at the cops first that night that they were shooting at me? That basically was the bulk of my testimony. Did I hire Frenchie to investigate the cops? Why did I hire Frenchie?
Okay. Oh, so he testified also?
I don't know if he did, but his papers
evidence
was evidence.
Yeah. Okay. And what happened to the cops?
I'm sure he probably did testify.
Okay. And what happened to the cops that you testified against?
Oh, they got civil rights violations. None of them did any hard time. They got a hung jury the first time. It's hard for jurors to take the side of drug dealers against cops. It was over 100 inmates that came back to testify and eventually got their times cut behind this indictment.
Okay. Now, before you end up getting the life sentence in prison, you had other jail stints, right?
I did.
How many?
1.
For how many years?
I actually did 5.5 years.
5.5 years. And what were you convicted for?
Conspiracy to possess and conspiracy to distribute. Those are the only things that, I could have been arrested for other things, but those are the only convictions that I have.
Okay, so you did 5.5 years, and then you get out. How much time between you getting out from that jail sentence to your life sentence?
6 months.
6 months?
Yeah.
Okay. So, from what I understand, you were done with the drug game.
That was my plan when I left jail, and it's crazy because when I was in jail, I was a tennis coach in jail.
Okay.
I taught the cartel from Mexico and Colombia how to play tennis. So I had great connections if I wanted to to get back into the business.
Because before you were dealing with what was it, Peru?
No, I was dealing with Nicaraguans.
Nicaraguans. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But at this time, the Medellin and the Cali cartel had taken over the business, and they were the ones in prison. So my plan was to get out and to get in the music business. I had recognized what I could have done in the music business if I would have been on my game. I feel that I should have been the king of hip hop.